Welcome. My name is Ken Gonzalez, and I am your guide for the America's Time Zone portion of TFT13. So glad you could join us today. And for this session, we're kicking off with Mr. Shane Carlson. It's actually quite a lot of fun. I've had the opportunity to interact with him over the course of the last few years, and it's always been great fun. So I'm very proud to be able to introduce him today. I'm hoping that by the time we get to the Q&A, Mr. George Spalding will be joining us, so we'll hopefully get that online here. For those of you that are participating using social media, please use the TFT13 hashtag. We're tracking it for questions and comments, and hopefully that'll factor into what we're doing for the Q&A when we finish up. And as far as Shane goes, well, his Twitter handle is ITSM Pundit, but whenever I see his name, I always think Digger. Why? Because he's always going and digging up the most fun stuff, and stuff that quite often is like, hey, I really wanted to know that, and I consider myself fortunate that he's out there digging up all his gold and putting it out for everybody. So it's quite a lot of fun. He's a skilled and experienced IT management consultant with practical knowledge and extensive experience with ITSM and IT governance, best practices in addition to organizational change management, and a variety of other IT disciplines. His passion lies in leveraging technology to improve communities and the everyday lives of his fellow humans. Fortunately, I'm one of them. He's currently an associate director with Cognizant's IT management consulting practice, and without further delay, I hand you over to Mr. Shane Carlson. Shane, take it away, my friend.
Yeah, it is I just got to finish this tweet, and as soon as I get done with that, we'll get on with this. But
this is social live right here, right now. We're doing it.
No, in all seriousness here. My talk today is a lot about ensuring that we're being human. Or being human beings, if you will, in our digital personas. And as we go through the presentation, I think you'll see the point I was trying to make while I was pretending to be distracted, but I did actually send a tweet for you and I demonstrating how to not be a human being.
Oh.
But what my hope is through the course of the next 40 minutes or so, that we all come to a realization that we can augment ourselves and augment our humanity through our digital personas, and at the same time still retain what makes us human and some of the best parts of humanity. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to allow one of my digital surrogates here to kick off and drive through the presentation in the form of the video that I produce, and then Ken and I will join you back at the end of the video, and we'll take the live Q&A.
Okay.
So, I'm going to go ahead and share the video, and we'll let it roll.
Hello, my name is Shane Carlson, also known as the ITSM Pundit in my various digital personas across the internet, Twitter, my own website, itsmpundit.com, etc. I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about ensuring that we remain human through all of our digital personas and as we augment our humanity with technology and such. So definitely look forward to the time we're going to spend together, and I certainly hope you enjoy the presentation. So with that, we'll kick it off. And I'm here to talk to you today about why your cell phone thinks you're well, you can see it on the screen. So what we'd like to go through today really is about understanding the importance of what I call human being in your digital personas. And we'll get into a little bit later about what we mean by human being, but essentially what we're talking about here is the fact that as we augment ourselves with technology and we continue to expand the existence of our digital personas, what we end up finding is that we're starting to lose a little bit of what makes us human along the way. Now, in some cases, we are losing some of that. In other cases, we're gaining humanity through our extension. And my hope, my focus with the talk today is to help increase that humanity in our digital personas, and if anything, use this digital augmentation to amplify the qualities that make us human, and some of the reasons why we as human beings really exemplify humanity. And I hate to define a word with a word here, but there really is no better word for these qualities. So with that, getting a little bit into the presentation here. The problem as I see it is our digital augmentation extends our reach, and in doing so, it extends our potential to influence others. But as we extend ourselves, we tend to dilute ourselves, and we lose some of that humanity. And I think it's important for us as individuals and as a society as a whole to really fight and keep each other honest and keep each other true to these qualities that make us great, and really to fight to hold on to our humanity in our digital spaces. There's a saying or a quote from J.R.R. Tolkien from the Fellowship of the Ring series, and it's Frodo, as he's been carrying the ring, and the weight of the ring continues to bear on him, and he's talking to Sam, and he says to Sam, I feel thin, sort of stretched, like butter scraped over too much bread. And this is a quote that has always resonated with me since I first read the books many, many years ago. But really, to me, this exemplifies the problem we're seeing in our digital spaces, where we're spreading ourselves so thin through so many outlets, through Facebook, through Twitter, through Google+, through Instagram. There's little pieces of us everywhere, but there's still only so much of us to go around. And although these technologies augment us in such a way that we can extend ourselves, if we're not careful, we're going to spread ourselves too thin, and we're not going to be able to keep up and give enough of ourselves to remain human in these digital personas and this digital augmentation. And one of the things we're seeing here is, you've heard the expression from the movie Aliens: in space, no one can hear you scream. Well, the opposite is quite true in the digital space, where everyone hears you scream. They also see you tweet. They see you friend other people. They see the things you like. They see the circles that you make. They see the things that you share. And in some cases, they see things you don't even realize you're sharing. And so I think it's important as we live in these digital personas that we allow ourselves to, one, understand how we appear to others in our personalities, and that we become an extension of our human personas and our physical personas in the digital spaces. I had a conversation via Google Plus just a few weeks ago after a conference. I believe it was Mark Kawasaki, actually, the wind-up bird, ITSM, who said that he had met someone in person who he'd only interacted with it online, and that person gave him some very frank feedback that until he had met him in person, he didn't really feel like he was worth investing in friendship-wise. And meeting him in person kind of changed the way he felt about him. And this is one of those things, and what I said to Mark was that I was in a unique opportunity, or I was in a unique position to have followed him not only in his professional personas online, but in some of his personal personas on Instagram and Facebook, and had seen more of him than he allowed himself to be shown in some of his other digital personas. And I think this is a good example. It's important to make sure that what you're putting out there and extending yourself and how you're augmenting yourself in the digital space is just as important as the things that you don't show. So you need to make sure that there's enough of you sprinkled into each of your digital personas that someone who is coming along and just seeing a slice of your digital life can get a good feeling for who you are and whether you're worth investing time in, either from a professional point of view or from a friendship point of view. So one of the things that's causing us to extend ourselves so much in the digital space is the fact that we are so interconnected nowadays. From an interconnected point of view, it used to be you knew someone who might know someone who was there. And back in the, I believe it was in the 90s, there was this game called 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. And in the 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, what the game was is it was your job to to make a connection to someone in Hollywood, be it an actor, be it a director, etc., who can be connected to Kevin Bacon with six degrees. So, someone who was in a movie with him, related to someone who directed a movie, related to someone who was in another movie, who was directed by that person. And it was nearly impossible not to find a single person in Hollywood who wasn't connected at the time to Kevin Bacon. He was quite prolific. I don't think there was a single case where people would kind of play these games where you couldn't connect someone in that space to Kevin Bacon during the time frame. One of the things that's gotten very interesting over the last 10 or 15 years is the fact that you can now connect people in 3 degrees of separation. Have you ever actually tried to look for somebody on LinkedIn and not found them to be somewhere in your extended network or related to someone who's in your network? And as technology moves and we move ourselves more into these digital spaces, those degrees of separation are going to shrink, considerably, 3 degrees, 2 degrees, 1 degrees. As of right now, you can connect many people to Kevin Bacon with just 1 degree, and you can connect yourself simply by liking him on Facebook, following him on Twitter, etc. Beyond that, and this is where the interconnectedness begins to really show us how we live our lives in the digital space. I can now see which of my friends like Kevin Bacon, who works for Kevin Bacon at Kevin Bacon Enterprises. People in a particular demographic, people in a particular geography. There's many different ways to gather this information, and we're driving this ourselves by the things we like on Facebook, the people that we follow, the digital exhaust and the digital footprints that we leave in our digital personas. We're creating tons and tons of information about ourselves that marketers have been trying for years and years and years to pay for. They're now getting it hand over fist from companies like Facebook and Google, etc., about our consumption habits, about our likes, about what we listen to, about what movies we watch. And we're handing it over freely, and in many cases we don't even realize it. One of the things I want to tell you about your digital worlds is that they're truly smaller than you think they are. And no matter how large your friend networks are, no matter how large your professional networks are, one of the things you need to realize is that, again, you're only a couple degrees of separation away from any one individual. And it's especially true in your digital personas, in your friend networks, especially in Facebook. I'm a big analytics geek. I love to analyze data. I love to see the data that I'm creating on a daily basis. And one of the things that I did about a year or so ago, might have been longer now, is Wolfram Alpha, the giant, big data analytics company, for lack of a better word. They put out a Wolfram Alpha for Facebook, which what it did is it allowed you to analyze your Facebook profile and really get into the metrics of who you are, who your friends are, what do they like, what are the nature of the relationships you have with these people. And one of the things that I found fascinating was that you could take and map all of your friends. And this here is actually the map out of all of my friends. At the time that I did this, it was somewhere in the order of 370 friends. And what they did here, and on the actual Wolfram Alpha site, I can hover over each of these bullet points and plots on the graph here and see which of my friends these are. And what became very interesting to me is the way they plot these things out is on a couple different dynamics. Each color represents a logical grouping of friends based off of not only my connection to them, but their own interconnectedness. And the more interconnected the friends are, the closer the grouping of circles. The more complex the relationships, the more lines between all of the friends, and the further away from the center is, the further away I am from them in terms of interconnectedness. So a friend of a friend of a friend, or simply a friend who doesn't have a lot of connections with my other friends. So if you look at actually at the top in the royal blue circles that are kind of loosely gathered together. That is actually my friends on Facebook who are in the ITSM industry. So, and actually in the lowermost point, right there, the big line that connects to the group of purple down below that's more tightly woven, what that is, that's actually Matt Barron. And you can see Matt's actually quite closely connected to the majority of my friends in the ITSM space. But I thought it was very interesting the way all of this happens. Now down there in the purple, that's actually a group of friends who are very well interconnected here, and most of those are locally in the region that I'm in. The green to the right, what you'll see there, that's a combination of two groups of people, the majority of which I worked with at a particular company, and some of which I have grown to be friends with who are no longer at that company, but are interconnected to other friends of mine. So it's very interesting when you start looking at these dynamics and how interconnected your friends are, but at the same time, how segmented certainly much smaller than we think it is. So the things that you do in this digital space have a very great impact very quickly to everyone in your social network. Again, the things you like, the comments you make, the way you present yourself in this space is very important because you're not just an island. You're connected to the world. You're connected to people. And it's honestly quite amazing how quickly, and also, good behaviors that you exemplify, you pass along to people, and their perception of who you are is quickly formed by these snippets of what they see in your digital life. There's many people on this list. I used to have a rule on Facebook that I wouldn't become friends with anyone that I didn't actually meet in person and I couldn't consider a friend in real life. As we all know, the definition of friends has changed dramatically over the last 5 to 7 years as we continue to befriend, in air quotes, people that we've never met face to face and in many cases never will. Again, our digital personas are reaching into parts of the world that our physical bodies may never reach. And we're reaching the lives of people every day that we wouldn't have otherwise without this technology. And I think it's important to remember that we need to treat these people very much the same as we would if they were sitting in our living room. This next slide here is actually, it's the same information represented somewhat differently. This shows me by the different color combinations, the nature of my different connections and whether they are social connectors themselves. Do they bring these groups of people together? Are they social outsiders? Are they people who sit on the periphery of these friend groups and are friends with all of them but don't necessarily interact very often with them? And again, social connectors, hyperconnectors, etc. And you can see in these groups of friends, some of them are kind of the hub of these friend networks. They bring many of the friends together. There may actually be social bridges between groups of friends. There's a variety of things that I think are very important, and understanding how these friend dynamics work. I think it's very important to understanding how we should be living and where we should be focusing our energies in the world and what we should be striving towards. I pride myself on being a social connector. I pride myself on connecting other people, in many cases, whether I benefit from that connection or not. I think it's important that we connect the right people together in the right places for their benefit. And I'll talk about that a little bit later as we move through the presentation. One of the things that I think is important once you understand the fact that you aren't going to be judged solely on the person you are in the physical world, as we move into more and more digital existence and less physical existence, it's important for us to understand that our data is our legacy. We're creating data every day. In some cases, we create it intentionally. In other cases, we don't. I think it's important that we really spend some time looking at the footprints that we leave, looking at the data that we leave behind, looking at the exhaust that sometimes we unintentionally leave behind, and be very thoughtful in how we interact in this world. Be very thoughtful around the things that we do. Be very thoughtful in the way that we treat other people in this space. Some of the things that are scrolling through the screen right now I think are important. One is the things that I know I'm sharing into the world. It's my Facebook timeline. It's over here on the right, kind of replaying and flashing, and I kept them small on purpose. I didn't want other people's things that they share with me to be presented here in the public. So here's the things that I share on my timeline, the things I like, the people I'm friends with. On the left-hand side, this is the analytics from Wolfram Alpha. This is digging into the nature of those Facebook relationships and the things that aren't necessarily shared publicly. At the bottom, these are my check-ins on Foursquare, where I've been geographically, what information I'm sharing around that, things of that nature. And again, these are the things that I am sharing publicly. These are the things that I'm presenting out to the world, on purpose, intentionally. But over here on the right-hand corner, there are things that I am sharing simply by listening to things on Spotify, by liking things that other people are posting, by sharing links, by reading stories across the web, etc. So again, be careful what you like. Be careful how you comment. Be careful the way you treat others. Be careful with the information you leave in public, because you're not isolated anymore. Almost everything we do is interconnected. Almost everything we do online has some sort of traceability back to us. So we really need to focus and ensure that we're doing things in a positive way, in a way that other people can admire and respect. Because eventually, if you focus too much negativity in your digital personas, which is very easy to do, we're going to be perceived in a way that we don't necessarily want to be. It may not be accurate given the entire nature of who we are. But if it's how we present ourselves in our digital personas, that's how we're going to be perceived. And as we all know, perception is reality until people are given a new perception. One of the things that I think is driving this dilution of our humanity is the fact that we're accelerating how much of ourselves we pour into our digital personas on a staggering basis. And I'm going to share with you a couple excerpts from some slides from the Kleiner Perkins Koffel Byers annual internet report from Mary Meeker. And I think there were some very telling things in there, and there were literally hundreds of pages of data, and I wanted to, literally, I could probably spend the next 6 hours talking about these things, but I wanted to spend a little time, on a couple things that I think is driving our data overload and our humanity dilution that we're seeing today. This is a slide here that Mary Meeker had put together, which talks about the amount of digital information that's been created and shared, and these are tracked in zettabytes. And if you don't know what a zettabyte is literally 1 trillion gigabytes. I'll let that sink in for a minute. That's a lot of data. And this has been tracked roughly since 2005, and what they've seen is back in 2005, very little amount of data. I mean, back then we thought it was staggering how much, hundreds of terabytes, thousands of terabytes, etc. Well, back around 2009, 2010, when Facebook and some of these other social platforms really started taking off, we saw this start to climb pretty steadily. And, by 2011, there was almost 2 zettabytes created. Again, 2 trillion gigabytes. That's a lot of data. And again, this is information that's created on an annual basis. Well, what we've seen just in the 2 years since 2011, that amount of information has almost doubled. And again, staggering. Go from 2 trillion or 2 zettabytes or 2 trillion gigabytes to 4 zettabytes or almost 4 trillion gigabytes. Again, a ton of information being created. And the expectation is in the next 2 years, that's going to double again. So literally in a space of 4 years, we've gone from 2 zettabytes, again, 2 trillion gigabytes, to almost 8 zettabytes or 8 trillion gigabytes. on an annual basis. This is information that's being created in 1 year. That's not cumulative. This is an annual creation. So add all of this stuff out there together back to the late 90s, when the internet really started taking off, and you see, there's this huge pile of digital, I don't want to call it waste because so much of it is valuable, but there's just all this digital information that's piling up and piling up and piling up. From a sharing point of view, just going to dig into that a little bit and look at, kind of our social interactions. As human beings, we're very visually driven. So pictures of us, pictures of our friends, pictures of our family, pictures of our dogs, pictures of our cats. And I'll blame Mark Kawasaki for bringing Catter Day into the ITSM world. Thank you very much, Mr. Kawasaki. But as we go through this information, back in 2008, roughly, is when Facebook really kind of made it easy to share photos online. And back then, there were some photo sharing sites. Flickr was probably the biggest one, and you can see the yellow line in 2007. It had very small impact. So what we're looking at here is this is the number of photos uploaded and shared per day in the millions. And the main sites that they're tracking here are Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and Flickr. So Flickr was barely putting a dent in the market. They were probably 1 or 2 million photos shared per day on the sites. And back then, again, that was an amazing number. 2008, Facebook adds photo sharing, and suddenly we see a pretty big jump, almost 10 million photos a day. By the next year, 2009, we were sharing at a pace of about 75 to 80 million photos a day on that platform alone. Between 2009 and 2010, we saw a huge jump. And in 2010 is actually when Facebook revamped their photo sharing and made, photos bigger. They made them easier to share. You started being able to tag people in these photos. And the social dynamics around sharing photos suddenly changed in a dramatic and measurable way. Suddenly, not only could I put a picture on there, but I could tell you who was in the picture, where the picture was taken. Bring it into the context of the social dynamics that says, look at the fun things we're doing. Look at the amazing stuff I'm seeing. Look at the people that I'm with. And suddenly, our need to be loved as a human being, our need to be liked, our need for people to share in our experiences was amplified, and things just took off. 2010, 200 million photos shared on a daily basis. Think about that. It's just amazing to me. 2011, we saw a little bit of a jump, and we've seen some incremental growth since then in Facebook. 2011, 2012 timeframe, 2012, Instagram jumps on the scene. They had filters, the ability to do fun things, hashtags around photos. And they saw, considering the size, they saw a pretty big jump, especially, in their first year. They surpassed Flickr, and many of the other social photo sharing sites out there. And we're on the fast track to really, taking off. And then Facebook bought them as part just before they went public. And then a funny thing happened in 2012. A little company called Snapchat changed the social dynamics. So here we are 2 years along. We're playing in the same dynamics with hashtags and tagging people. This mega social Facebook and Twitter and all these things where you can quickly share things and share them with people. And all of a sudden, Snapchat comes along, and what they've done is they've said, look, I want to share things with people, but I don't want them to keep the photos necessarily. I want them to see something for a limited period of time, and I want to know if they take a picture of it, etc. And what we've seen is that a certain demographic of the population, mainly teens and young adults, were using this at a ridiculous rate. And so the question behind that is, what are the social behaviors driving the rapid adoption of that? And you can see, this launched in late 2012, and they saw, almost 30 or 40 million pictures per day uploaded. They're on pace for 2013 to do over 150 million users per day, or shares per day of photos. And that's expected to just keep growing and growing, because what they've done is they've given people a level of control over this information. They've allowed you to select the audience for who can see it, how long they can see it for, and in what ways they can interact with that. And if they try and take a screenshot of it, or they try and do something with it, you're going to be notified. So they've given an element of control over and above the social expansions that were there from 2009 through 2012. And they're bringing a different element to it. And in some ways, some people might say that may be driving some bad behavior, may actually be further diluting our humanity. And I think, again, if we don't remember to center ourselves as human beings in all of these digital interactions, we will truly be lost. So, again, a lot of information here. Our digital personas are growing faster in many cases than our physical personas. We're meeting more people in the digital space than we would ever have a chance to meet in our physical spaces. And so where do we go from here? I mean, again, we continue to increase these things. It's harder and harder to remember that at the end of that line, that wire, that wireless connection, that mobile phone are the other human beings that are there. And again, we're talking bits and bytes. We're talking, two-dimensional, sometimes three-dimensional images or representations of people. But sometimes it's very hard unless we see the other human being behind the keyboard to remember that we're dealing with other humans. So where do we go from here? I'll talk a little bit about some examples of this human dilution or dilution of humanity that we're seeing in the digital spaces. And I've got some examples here that I've collected from around the web over the last year. And, I would call this section jokingly, human is as human does. This is how we live. This is how, when the aliens come down from the spaceships and look at our archival information that we've collected over the internet, this is how they're going to see us. And only we have the power to change that and shape that. Because if I were just to simply measure us based off of what I'm seeing on the internet, I would assume that we've lost our humanity. And I'll go through some examples here. This is a story that ran on the New York Times recently, actually just this week. And it was written from the point of view of the author, who basically said, I'm going through my Instagram feed, and all of a sudden, I see a friend of mine posing in a hotel room in a lime green thong underwear, and that was it. From her point of view, it was scandalous. It was over the top. It was publicly posted. It wasn't even on someone's private profile. And what was even more amazing to her is how many people liked it. Dozens of likes, lots of encouraging comments. And further in the article, she starts digging kind of into the social or the social side of this, and what's driving human beings. And one of the things she says here is that a growing collective compulsion to document our lives and share them online, combined with the instant gratification that comes from seeing your picture or your photo or your status update being liked and approved by your peers, is encouraging this bad behavior and causing us to act in ways that we wouldn't act if we were in a room full of people. So the semi-anonymity or the curtain that we hide behind on the internet is causing us to act out in ways that we might not otherwise. Another example. Google Glass, in our industry, technology in general, we've heard a lot about this as they've launched. Immediately, within the days after the Glass product launching, the meme started. The moniker glass hole was applied to people who abuse the technology and use it in a way to dehumanize themselves. I'm going to play this quick snapshot here. And want you to just kind of go through it. Again, it's satire, it's comedic, but I think it's representative of the slippery slope that we're on relative to the technology that we use and the way we digitally augment ourselves. And again, could potentially lose part of our humanity as a part of this. And of course, the video is going to fail to load. It worked just fine in the run-throughs. And okay, we're gonna skip that. Go and watch it. But the point behind it is really, it's very easy to abuse technology. It's very easy to alienate yourself from other people by not realizing that your behaviors in the digital space, your behaviors as an augmented human, can be taken very negatively if you don't spend the time to ensure that you're bringing a level of humanity to it. Another article here, this one came from the Wall Street Journal last month, and it was talking about the fact that we're losing some social graces in our physical spaces too, in the fact that we make eye contact on a whole almost 30% less than we typically used to as a society. And what they talk about here is the fact that the use of mobile devices, the fact that we're constantly looking down at this 4 or 5 inch screen and interacting the world and using that as our porthole to the world, we're losing our contact emotionally with other human beings. The quote here is, it's almost become culturally acceptable to answer that phone at dinner or to glance down at the baseball scores while you're among a group of physical human beings, among a group of other human beings. Psychologists are talking to this, the fear of missing out. You see this portal to your digital personas and your digital worlds, which has become an extension of your life. And you feel like if you aren't constantly checking those social spaces, looking at Facebook, checking Twitter, looking for those likes and those shares of the things that you put out there, that you're missing out on something. That you are suddenly not going to be whole unless you know what everyone else in your social space, 300, 400, 500 people are having for lunch that day. Again, we're driving this through the technology, and again, this is a sense of the dilution of our humanity, the loss of our humanity, if you will. And we need to be very careful about this. We need to, as individuals, check this behavior and ensure that we're paying attention to the people around us. The next example, one that's been in the news over the last weeks, even our government is taking this data that we're creating on a daily basis, our social interactions, and digging through it, rummaging through it. And although they claim that it's really for our protection, you have to realize that anything you do in the digital world, is a permanent record. And no matter how private you think it is, someone somewhere can see it. It's sitting on a server. A server administrator can find it. Someone, can get to it and look at it and talk to it. The last example I'm going to give here, this is something that came up on Reddit, and I tell people all the time that Reddit is the perfect self-managing online forum. You have the best of humanity in some cases and the worst of humanity, but for some reason it tends to balance out and correct itself over time. So what happened here is a Reddit user had taken a picture, I believe in an airport or in a restaurant, of a Sikh woman who basically said, I don't know what to conclude from this. He was confused by the fact that she had facial hair, but was obviously a woman. And really had no understanding of the Sikh at all, their history, their culture, etc. But he put it in, the Reddit r/funny and said, here's what's going on. I don't know what to think of this, and let's all have a good laugh at this person's expense. Again, humanity, would you do this to this person in person? Would you stand in the middle of that restaurant and point at her? Would you call her out because you didn't understand who she was, and you thought it was easier to make fun of her than it would? Again, you probably wouldn't do that in person, but people are doing that all over the internet. So something really strange happened that doesn't often happen in this. Usually when people are turned into memes, they remain anonymous to a certain point, and then they are socially embarrassed, stigmatized in many cases. In this case, one of her friends forwarded the Reddit link to her, and she decided she was going to get on there and defend herself. And she did it in a very amazing way. She talked about, her decision. She talked about, the history of the Sikh and how they feel about the human body, and that, she long ago had come to embrace all of these parts of her. And at the end of the day, her body would be turned to ash. But what was most important was how she was measured along the way as she lived. And, a pretty amazing response, very gracious, I think very telling about the person behind the picture. And then something that never happens on Reddit is the person who originally posted the photo got on and apologized. Basically said, I should have done it. What I did was very intolerant, very douche-baggy. He goes, and I wouldn't have done that in person. And the entire thread turned into a very positive lesson for the people that participate in, and even the people reading it, that look, a meme on the internet. We're not just a funny picture that we all laugh at. We're not a giant epic fail for the world to mock and make fun of. You know, we're humans, and at the end of the day, you know, we need to treat each other as such. So here at the end, I'm going to close and kind of talk about what the essence of human being is. You know, how do we continue to maintain our humanity as we move through? And I've got an expression that it's kind of become a mantra for me over the last year or so. And basically, it's you know, you need to be mindful in the moment, regardless of the medium. It's very easy to be mindful when you're face to face with someone, when you're in a room with them. You need to be present in your interactions, and I just found a spelling correction that needs to happen, and I'll make sure I do that before we go live. But you know, be present in your interactions, regardless of whether you're face to face with someone sitting in your living room, or you're at a restaurant. You know, focus on them, focus on the interaction you're having with them. Make eye contact. Leave your phone in your pocket. Leave your phone on the table. You know, remember that you are human first and foremost. You know, you are human regardless of how you're talking to someone, whether it's Skype or Twitter or Facebook, etc. And remember that they are human. You know, at the end of that digital device, you know, the other person you're talking to is a human being. And at the end of the day, all we really have is our ability to be decent to our fellow human beings. Strip away the money, strip away the digital technologies, strip away all the material things in this world, and you know, you have two people in a loincloth, you know, staring at each other, trying to figure out how we survive in this world. And if we remember that at the end of the day, we can treat each other with humanity and with respect. And even though we're augmented and extended in the digital worlds, we are humans at our core. You know, I'm calling this section "Face It," but one of the things that helps is, you know, add photos to all your mobile contacts. You know, pull up a picture of someone when you talk to them. You know, one of the tricks that I used to use for myself to remember, you know, who I was talking to, or in some cases, you know, when I'm talking to someone I've never met. You know, at a company I worked for, we had a directory that had photos of everyone in the company. And if I was talking to someone who either I had never met before, or hadn't talked to in some time, or was in a different location than I would pull up their photo in the directory, and I'd keep that on my screen as I was having a conversation with them to remind me that there was a person on the other end of the phone. You know, so it wouldn't be so easy to you know, disregard their feelings. It wouldn't be so easy to treat them in a certain way. You know, my focus on them was, you know, you're a human being. We're having an interaction. Let's make sure that at the end of the day, we treat each other with respect. You know, one of the other things is, you know, think about, you know, as you make a comment on Facebook, as you laugh at a funny epic fail video on YouTube, that, you know, how would you react if the situation was reversed and it was you know, the comments were being made about, or the, you know, you that other people were reacting to in such a way. You know, think about that. Also think about this. No one's ever going to remember the words in that moment, but they are going to remember how you made them feel. And think about that with every interaction you have online, in person, etc. That, you know, people aren't going to remember the words that you said, no matter how witty you think you are, but they are going to remember the way you make them feel. Now, if you make them feel good, they'll remember that always. If you make them feel bad, they'll remember that for always and longer. And so will the rest of the world, because your comments will be out there. Here's a good example of a picture. When I'm talking to somebody online or on the phone, I'll pull up their LinkedIn profile. This is Mr. Ken Gonzalez, who happens to be our host here in the Americas for today. You know, pull up his picture, talk to him. You know, again, he's a human being. He's not just some guy on the other end of a Google Hangout. This section I'm calling Creep for the Good of All, and this is inspired by a friend of mine who works at Twitter and has used his job at Twitter as a way to go out and hyper-connect to people for his good and for the benefit of others. Some people might call him a digital creeper. He will stalk the living heck out of people until they become friends with him on Twitter, and in many cases in real life. He's done this with a lot of people in the digital world, and has made some connections with some pretty amazing people as a result. He's also made connections for other people, hyper-connecting other individuals in the digital world for their benefit and not necessarily his own. So he kind of expired this section, and basically what I say is, if you have that ability to hyper-connect people, do it. Use your powers for good. Connect other people simply for their benefit, and praise other people when it's due. One of the other things, too, is, don't be afraid to correct someone's behavior online, to call them out for the things that they're doing, but do it in the moment. Don't wait a week, don't wait a month, do it while it's happening, and always do it to improve them, to help them, to help the situation, not just to tear them down. We see too much interaction in the digital world these days where people are just trying to tear other people down and not, provide improvement to them. So, again, correct people when it's required, but not in a negative way. Always focus on the positive. Always focus on the improvement. Always focus on helping someone learn something from it. And there's a quote here that I came across recently that I thought was, expresses the essence of this. To free a person from error is to give and not to take away. And this is Arthur Schopenhauer. And what this basically tells me is that, people need to be told when they're doing something that affects other people negatively, or when they're creating errors. So to bring that to someone's attention, you're freeing them from that error and you're giving them something and not taking away. But again, it has to be done in a spirit of positivity and not necessarily negativity. And at the end here, I'm just going to leave you with a simple quote from Doctor Who that says, "The way I see it, every life is a pile of good things and bad things. Good things don't always soften the bad things, but vice versa. The bad things don't necessarily spoil the good things or make them unimportant." And again, at the end of the day, all we have is our ability to be good to one another.
Well, thank you all. A special thanks to all of you who voted for me in the first block of speakers. I was very honored to, in a matter of 3 or 4 days, shoot to the top there and get in with this first block of speakers, and definitely among people who are over and above my skill level on a lot of different subject areas. I'm just happy to be included with them among my peers. And speaking of peers, there's a face I haven't seen in a long time, Mr. George Spalding. How are you doing, sir?
I'm just fine, Shane. Hi. That was very nice. I found myself with technical difficulties and finally got on board here.
That's quite all right. Better to see your face late and technically deficient than not at all, right?
Technically deficient. I think that puts me right there.
Definitely glad you made it, George.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ken. It took a minute.
Yeah.
So, George, given that you got at least most of Shane's presentations, any comments on what stood out for you?
Well, aside from going back to some of the earlier parts, I discovered what a zettabyte was, which I had no idea. I thought that the whole world ended at exabyte back in the days of Windows NT, but I see we've gone further than that. But I guess that, especially at the end, the last, maybe 10, 15 minutes, we take all this digital stuff that we're doing now and nothing's really changed. I mean, people should be people with each other, and people should respect each other, and nothing's changed at all. It doesn't seem, in spite of the fact that we've uploaded millions or gazillions of photos and all the rest of that. And it's, I suffer from, I'm sitting at dinner and the thing will ring and, I don't know what to do. It depends who I'm with. Kind of, if they're really, really good friends, I'll look at it. And if it's my son or something, I'll answer it and those kinds of things. But always, I'm sorry, I just have to talk, for 2 seconds. But I also have seen, I've got grandchildren who they just can't take their eyes off this thing. I mean, And we've all seen pictures of young people, and of course everyone's young to me, but young people out in a restaurant, and there's 4 of them in a booth, and no one's talking. They're all looking at screens, you know, and that they're all doing it. And that's the new definition of going out. And it makes no sense to me. I don't get it. So anyway, I related a lot, Shane. I really did.
Yeah, I think we all can. And it's amazing, too, that we have that sliding scale that you mentioned, depending on the people that we're with, that we don't mind offending. You know, we'll pick up that call or leave it on the table or things of that nature. But it's very interesting watching the social dynamics change. But at the end of the day, like you said, the golden rule is still the golden rule. You know, we want to treat people the same way we would expect to be treated. And I think we have to fight to retain that. We really do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think you gave some statistics about the fact that we're starting to actually lose social skills.
Yes.
And that's insane. That's crazy. I mean, that's all we got at the end of the day. All the rest of this junk is just details. And, you know, okay, we didn't have these, you know, X number of years ago, and, you know, X number of years from now, we'll have something totally different, and this will be a dinosaur. And so now what, right? Now what are we going to do?
Exactly. So,
well, I know for my purposes, and very early on in the presentation, you talked about that something that really rang for me, which is my goal from the start in terms of using social media and being out there is to have people get a sense of who I am just by looking at the tweets and the things I post. And so looking at what you leave behind, your data is your legacy. And I find that the longer that I'm doing this and the older that I'm getting, it's much more important to me to cultivate relationship and not be so one-dimensional. Like, I want people to have an understanding or at least an appreciation of the many different things that I'm interested in. Even if, you know, it isn't your cup of tea to play jazz guitar. You know, that's something that's of interest to me, and by knowing that there's some aspect that you can tune into that is, you know, it's just that much more engaging, that much more personal.
Yeah. Well, just judging by the international community's measure and understanding of your love for bacon alone, Ken, I think you're being successful.
Oh, are you a bacon guy?
Oh yes.
Who's not a bacon guy, George? Come on.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm out of it. What can I tell you? Gosh, well, we have something in common right away then. Bacon.
Yeah.
I'm on a no.
I wanted to work a bacon reference into the presentation, but I just couldn't find a good place. So.
This is your brain. This is your brain on bacon.
Oh, it's great. I love it.
Yeah. That's great. I didn't know that. Do you play jazz guitar, by the way?
I do.
You do. Oh, see, we got bacon, and I do not play jazz guitar. I'm nowhere near that, so that's fine. Okay, that's good.
Well, Shane, anything for you in terms of to kind of wrap up?
You know, just from my point of view, I mean, I think I summed it up. At the end of the day, we strip everything else away. All we have is our ability to be decent to one another. And whether you're sitting in my living room or you're on the other end of a digital device, I strive to treat you the same way. I don't always make it. That's part of being human. You know, if we were perfect, you know, we wouldn't be having conversations like this. We'd be lounging in hammocks while people fed us grapes because there'd be no problems to solve in the world. But because we do, again, you know, let's treat each other with respect. Let's treat each other with dignity. And as we augment ourselves with technology, you know, we've got to fight harder to do that. So that's all I've got.
George?
Well said. Well, the one thing I can't help noticing is that none of us are perfect, so we all make mistakes, and we all say things perhaps we would rather have not said. The problem nowadays, since 2013, is there's always a record of it.
Yep.
There was a time when we said stupid things and it was gone. It was done, went away. Now, no, I say stupid things and they're there forever. They're written down. They're archived. They're on 17 servers. It's dead, right?
Yeah. And then they become an internet meme and you're famous forever.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, for all of our viewers out there, thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the presentation as much as we did, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. So until then, hope you have a great day. Bye for now.
Bye now. Thanks, Shane.
Bye, guys.
Introducing My IT from BMC Software. One quick download and the way your users think about IT changes forever. Let's say they need a networked printer, or a Wi-Fi connection, or even a map of an office they're visiting. My IT already knows where they are and shows them a list of available resources and services pre-configured for their devices. Or maybe your user needs help with something more complex. With My IT, they can do most things themselves. But if they can't, they can simply schedule an appointment with a technician who can. In short, My IT is built to make your IT organization more modern and your users infinitely happier, dramatically changing the perception of your services